Welcome to the Growth Boss podcast, where we seek out the secrets to high-performing campaigns from some of the smartest marketers in the world. I'm your host, Jared Smith. Today, I have Nathan Gotch with me, and he's going to teach us how to build a successful SEO business in 2025. Nathan is an SEO expert with over 10 years of experience helping businesses grow online. He's the founder of Gotch SEO Academy, a top training program for SEOs, and the CEO of Rankability, which is an on-page optimization tool. Nathan is also the author of The SEO Entrepreneur and has been featured on sites like SEMrush and Ahrefs. His YouTube channel has over 100,000 subscribers, and he has done just a tremendous job helping to improve our industry as a whole. I have a lot of respect for Nathan, and it is a pleasure to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. That was a very nice intro.
Awesome. So to get started, I really, I want everybody to kind of understand a little bit of the origin story for you getting involved in the industry, kind of before we start to maybe give some practical advice on how other SEOs can start maybe an agency or maybe another type of business this year. But I think it's important for people to understand kind of where you came from. So can you kind of provide those details?
Yes. Yeah. So, I mean, that intro sounds really nice. I certainly didn't start there. So there was a lot of build up to this, and it was not easy by any means whatsoever. So this was when I was still going into my senior year of college. So this is like 2011 going into 2012. And my path basically was that I was going to become a lawyer, right? That's where I was going to go. I was, studying for the LSAT. I was getting a degree in political science. Like that was the path I was going to go. Kind of what my family wanted me to do, type of thing. But secretly, what I really wanted to do was I wanted to work online. That was like something I always wanted to do because I'm like, that would be so cool if I could just make some money online and I could just like work from anywhere. And like, I didn't even care about how much money I made. I just wanted like the freedom to do that.
Sure.
And so I just started exploring all these different ways to make money online. And about 99% of them did not work. So yeah, I literally tried almost everything you can think of. I did paid surveys. That's where I started because I'm like, oh, this seems really easy. I just do a bunch of paid surveys and I make money. I would sit in my dorm room and this was my girlfriend at the time, but now my wife, she thought I was insane. I was just like doing these surveys all day and not doing my homework, right? Just doing these surveys. And I think I maybe like made, I don't know, it was like $20, $30 or something. And of course, I never got paid out because I never hit the threshold. But I started to do the math. I'm like, well, wait a second here. Is this really going to work long term? I don't think this is super scalable. And I'm actually making way less than I would make if I just worked at McDonald's. So it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. Then I transitioned to a few other things. I started writing articles for like e-zine articles and these other things.
Yeah.
Didn't make a whole lot of money doing that either. And then eventually, through a lot of these trial and errors, I eventually stumbled upon this course, and at the time it was called Web Colleagues. And it was like $47. And as a broke college student, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know how I'm going to be able to make this work. $47. But I actually pulled the trigger. And so I bought it. And then like there were a bunch of sketchy tactics inside of this Make Money Online course. But one of them, which actually like really stood out to me, was starting a blog. And so I was like, I think I could do that. Like, I feel like I could just start a blog and write about stuff. But there was a problem is like, I had no skills. So I was like, what am I going to blog about? And the only thing that I really knew how to do, I guess, pretty well was play baseball at the time. So I was, starting pitcher on my baseball team in college. And I was like, well, I guess I could talk about pitching. Like, that'd be cool. It's something I do, all the time. And I'm somewhat passionate about it. So I did that. I started theultimatepitcher.com. And, that was really the beginning of me getting involved in this kind of SEO world because I started just doing what most people claim you should do, which is, just build it and they will come and just write content and everything will just magically work out for you. Of course, that didn't work out for me. I just was writing a ton of content and got no traffic, right? So eventually that's what led me right back to Google. And I was like, how do I get traffic? How do I get traffic to this blog? And of course, that's when I stumbled upon SEO. I was like, this seems pretty cool. Like, I feel like I could do this. Of course, I didn't have money to pay for ads. So this was the only option.
Yeah.
And so I started just experimenting on this blog. And eventually I was like, whoa, I'm actually like starting to get organic traffic. And then all of a sudden I started getting Google AdSense clicks. And I'm like, whoa, this is like actually working. And then I still remember where I was when I made my first affiliate commission. And it was like we were about to go to bowling in college, like a bowling night. And I looked at my phone and I got an actual commission from my blog from a pitching program I was promoting.
Amazing.
And I was like, this is it. This is it. This is what I'm doing. I don't care how much money I make. Like, this is it, because I got a taste of that freedom, like the taste of the control and the freedom. I was like, yeah, I'll take the LSAT, but like, I know what I'm going to do. And so from like 2011 until about 2012, 2013, all I did was just experiment with SEO. That's all I did. I would start niche site after niche site. I had a Bowflex reviews website, a TRX reviews. There's a lot of like fitness related stuff. I did even under-counter ice makers reviews. I was all over the place. But it was funny because when I was building out these sites, I wasn't even really doing it to make a lot of money. I was actually doing it because my long-term objective was like, all right, if I know how to do this, like actually get consistent SEO results, I could certainly help businesses do this, right? So my goal was always like, I'm going to be able to sell my services to businesses. And so I was actually just kind of building up a portfolio more than anything, but really just getting the confidence to be able to do this the right way. And so that's kind of what led into 2013. I was working, after I graduated college, I was working all these oddball security jobs. I started working at doing loss prevention at a store in Beverly Hills. And I was there for a while and I was doing all my SEO stuff on the side. So it was like, I would get there because traffic in LA, obviously crazy. So I would leave my house at like 4. I'd get to, LA at 6, and then I would work on my stuff on my laptop up until I had to go to the actual job.
Yeah.
Then at lunch, I'd work on my stuff again. And then after, because traffic was so bad, I would just stay in Beverly Hills and keep working on my stuff and then drive home. And I did that for like a year straight. And I was just like working on this stuff all the time. Any free moment that I had, I was doing it. And, I always say this kind of jokingly, but I fortunately got laid off from that job. They just like let go of the whole security team. And I was like, all right, I've got a choice now. So do I keep, working these terrible jobs, or do I go all in on SEO? And I made that decision. And of course, my first thought was like, all right, I'm going to get hired as an SEO specialist, right? That's my idea. So I packed up my stuff, moved to St. Louis, and applied for every single SEO job in St. Louis. Literally everyone I could find, I applied for every single one. I got one response and I got one interview, and I did not get the job. So you can tell this is, like I said, this is not an easy process. I didn't get the job. And so I was basically left with the only option, which is like, all right, I gotta start doing this myself. So that's what I did. I started going on Craigslist, going on Quora. I started GotchSEO.com. I started ranking for St. Louis SEO company and all these things. And within my first full year of running my agency, I think I netted $104,000. So net profit, $104,000, which to me was like $1 billion at the time.
Absolutely.
Like that was like, I was like, how is this even possible? Like the imposter syndrome was through the roof, Yep. Now, of course, that's not a big deal now, but like at the time that was like crazy money. Yep. I've never seen that much money. And of course, at that point I was hooked. I'm like, this is it. I'm not doing anything. I'm going to be running this business.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the origin story. And there's a lot that's happened from 2013 to now, but that's kind of where it all kind of built up.
And I want to learn kind of about that transition from running an agency to, at some point you said, hey, I want to do some training. You've got a SaaS tool. Talk to us about how you got that off the ground. $100,000 in your first full year is awesome. I don't care what year it is. I mean, I think most people these days would be like, hey, right out of college or whatever, if I could start a business and do 100,000 my first year, I'd be thrilled with that. Talk to us a little bit about kind of what would you say are like the kind of core 2 to 3 keys to success that first year?
Yeah. I mean, I would say the key is like, I just really focused on acquisition. Like I was just being obsessive. Like I'd wake up in the morning and by the way, some of the tactics I used back then will not be applicable today.
Sure. Absolutely.
So like at the time, Craigslist, when people actually used to use it, I went in there and there were all these gigs. So different businesses looking for SEO specialists. I literally would apply to every single one every single day. Yep. And I got some. I actually landed some clients through that. Now, were they good clients is a different discussion altogether, but it actually gave me a nice pool of clients. And actually, what actually helped me the most was my white label services contracts. So I had a lot of direct working with business type of deals, but it was actually working with other agencies. And so they would bring me all their clients. I would do their SEO. And of course, they'd get the credit, but I would get paid. Right.
Yep.
So it was that kind of engagement. I had I think in the beginning, I probably 3 or 4 of those types of engagements. So that helped my revenue swell pretty quickly. There's downsides to that as well, which we can talk about, as far as scaling agencies.
Yep.
Not a great model because you have to price your services very low.
Yeah.
So the agency can actually make money.
Yep.
Right. And so it's kind of a tricky situation, but it's also dangerous because you're one single point of failure and you can lose a lot of revenue very fast. And so there's just a lot of things we talk about on that front. But the point is that was the main thing is I focused on every day I'd set a target for responding to gigs. I would respond to questions on Quora. And that was even when Quora wasn't really that popular.
Yeah.
I mean, I was going in there answering questions. And then honestly, the biggest, hands down, should be no surprise, my biggest lead generation technique was SEO, right? I ranked for St. Louis SEO company, and you'll see sometimes some stuff floating around that some SEOs claim that ranking for those keywords are pointless. Not true.
Yeah.
Not true at all. My biggest clients came from people searching on Google to find me. And they would literally say, we're going to go with you because you were ranking the best.
Yep.
Not because I had a bigger agency or... a big portfolio, or it was because they said, no, you were ranking above everyone else. Therefore, we believe you're better than everyone else.
Yep.
And I was like, that's a pretty interesting concept. And so to me, that was the biggest one was doing that. And then over time, I started to blog about my SEO results and do case studies, and I started to get a little bit of some traction on my blog, and that started to drive leads too. So honestly, it's pretty crazy because I'd say 99% of the leads that I've driven over the last decade have been all organic. So, and that's just the way that I've kind of operated, not against paid by any means, but I'm just saying that's the way that it's worked. So in the beginning, that was really that's kind of what drove the growth and actually getting results. Yeah. That was a big one. I actually was driving results for people and they were retaining. Yeah. And that's half the battle is actually keeping the clients.
Right.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. I love that. And that's very similar to kind of how I got started as well. Worked for one of the largest law firm web design companies. I wanted to be kind of the law firm SEO guy. And so reached out to them, was like, listen, I'll do all your work. And they're like, perfect. And that gave me time, about 5-6 months, to get ranked #1 for law firm SEO. And then after that, I was like, man, I'm kind of sick and tired. At that time, I think most of our projects were about $400 or $500. They were, reselling them for $2,000, $3,000. And I'm like, okay, and getting all the credit. I was like, yeah, this is a terrible model, but it bought me that time to kind of get the business off the ground. So you're running your agency, things are going well. You're ranked #1 for St. Louis SEO. At some point you said, all right, I want to do other things. How did that transition come about? Yeah.
I mean, I always, and this was something I just kind of discovered along the way, but when I started to blog and write about my stuff, and this actually kind of stemmed from my early blogging days of doing the Ultimate Pitcher, I just enjoy teaching. Honestly, for some reason that I enjoy giving someone, teaching someone to fish, right? I really enjoyed that process. And so I was like, I feel like I could start my own course. I've learned a lot doing this and I feel like I could share this information. And of course, let's be totally honest here. This was not a nonprofit. Right. So I was creating the training to get another revenue source to kind of de-risk the situation. Yeah. And so the most logical step for me was okay, I feel like that's the most next kind of progression of this entrepreneurship thing is all right, services and then training. And then of course now I've done a book in SaaS. I do believe it kind of goes in that order. I think if you're going to do it, that's probably the order you should go in because it gets progressively more difficult. Yeah. Each one that you go up. But for me, it was 2016, I created the first version of my training and I was deathly afraid of video. Deathly afraid. I did not want to do video. And this actually came from a really horrifying experience, at least in my mind, that I built it up from. This was I think this might have been 2015. We signed up for the Yelp Partner Program. Mm-hmm. Don't expect to get leads from that. But let's just say I made that mistake. So I signed up for that. And one of the criteria was that they're going to come to your so-called office. That was my apartment at the time. They came to my apartment and they are going to bring a videographer to record you, so you can talk about your business. Now, in my mind, I thought okay, they're going to come, we're going to have a script. There's going to be a teleprompter, piece of cake, right? It wasn't like that at all. It was totally unorganized. They came, they're all right, ready? Here's a camera, go. And I'm like, what? I never even did any type
Sure.
of video or anything. And I just remember being like, just nothing was going on in my mind, just blank. I had nothing. And it was so embarrassing. I was so like just disturbed by the whole situation. Like, I'll never do video. I will never do video. And then I actually you start to train yourself with these limiting beliefs, right? So like for me, I was like, well, I'm so good at copywriting. Like I'm good at copywriting, so I don't need to do video, right? Like, oh, that's my unique strength. I don't need to do it. And so, but eventually the reason why I did do it is because I did this launch with this training and it was all text based. And the first time that I launched it, I think I got 7 sales and I got like 4 refunds. So, and I was like, okay, the market has spoken to me.
Right.
And I need to change the way that this is. And like, I was surprised I didn't get 100% refunds, actually. I was actually surprised that people actually stuck with it. I was like, wow, that was crazy. But at that point, I was like, all right, I know I have to do video. I cannot avoid this anymore. I need to do it. And so I took baby steps into it. I didn't go like all in. What I did is the next version of the training, I didn't show my face at all. It was all over the shoulder videos, just talking through things. I didn't have a microphone. It was just like directly into my computer. The audio quality was horrendous. But I did do it, right? And it was, so I did like I did like 100 videos all over the shoulder, didn't show my face at all. And so that was like the second version. And the next version, I was like, all right, well, the quality of these videos is really, really bad. So what I did is I got a microphone and I basically redid every single video. So I did another 100 videos, except the audio was better this time. So, and of course it got me to practice again, right? And so then eventually I mustered up the courage to publish on YouTube. And the first video I actually published was I just took a video from my training and put it on YouTube. Sure. Right? Because I was like, I can't, I was too scared to do anything. But I knew at that time that video was going to be big. Like I was like, I can't avoid that. Like I could see the trend. I'm like, video is definitely the future. And it already was big at that time, but I knew like it was going to accelerate. And so I published that video and it did okay. And then finally I was like, you know what? I'm going to have to show my face. So I did my first talking head video. This is like 2017, I think. And it was actually ironically about how to make money online. And so I did this video and I keep it live on my channel despite being a very embarrassing video, but I do it more as a benchmark for myself. So when I can go back and look at that video and see how far I've come from them, that actually gives me a lot of confidence, right? And so a lot of people with their old videos, they get rid of them. Yeah. They don't want people to see them. They're like embarrassed by them. They just but like, I want to see it. I want to see where I've come. Cause if I haven't made progress, that's a real problem. Right. So anyway, that was the first video I did. It did fine. And then I was like, well, I guess I'm going to be doing this YouTube thing. So that's where the YouTube element started. And then I just kept doing the academy, in a similar form from like 2017 up until 2021 was basically open, close type of model. So open it up for a week, close it, open up for a week. And that did well. Eventually, I went from that first launch where I made like, $5,000 or something. And then one of the launches I did 6 figures in 1 week. So and it grew well. But then in 2021, I changed the whole program, completely new model. And if you want to, ask me a question about what we talked about already, I can tell you why I did that. Sure. And there's very distinct reasons why that happened. But let's just say it's bigger than ever now because of the changes that I made then. So if you want to kind of dig into some of the stuff I talked about there.
Yeah, I would like to learn a little bit more. Obviously, I think the product launch formula they were the ones who kind of mastered in the early days, these big launches. And then I think a lot of things, more recently have moved to more of the subscription model, which I haven't looked at your training, but I'm guessing that it fits that type of program. But yeah, maybe go into, a couple of the reasons why, just because I think it'd be good for people to understand that.
Yeah, I think the launch model can still work. I just don't think you can deploy it like every quarter like a lot of people used to do. I think you could do it if it's more infrequent, more scarce. And that model really just stemmed from Jeff Walker. Jeff Walker was kind of like quote unquote invented this model and then kind of everyone just did it. And I did it as well, right? Because it worked. But the reason that I switched actually wasn't because of that model or way of selling it. The reason I switched is because I actually started to look at the back end data of how my students were going through the training. And this actually happened because I found a statistic that said that roughly it's like 10% of people who join online courses actually finish them. So to me, I viewed that as a 90% failure rate.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, okay, if that 90% of people who are joining the training are not going through it, that's a real problem. No matter how good it is, whatever, just in general, that being the average. And of course, because my ego, I'm like, there's no way that people would do that in my training. There's no way that I'm in this category, right? It's just, that's not possible. So eventually I went and looked at the data and I was so disturbed by what I saw. I was like, so the first thing I saw was, I think it was 15% of people never even logged in.
Wow.
Bought the training, paid in full, didn't even log in. And I was like, what? I was so flabbergasted by that.
Yeah.
Like, and so then I dug even deeper. And then I found out that for my training, it was like, I think my completion rate was like 15%. So a little above average, but still by my standards, horrendous.
Yeah.
And I was so disturbed by it because I knew that if people actually went through the training, they obviously would get better results. It's just like impossible. If you go through the training and you take action, you're going to get results. So I'm very more for like taking extreme accountability for things. And so when I look at the, like take one small problem, people not logging in, I'm like, okay, how do I fix that problem? Right? Okay. So 15%, how do I get that down to 7%, and try to figure out how I can fix that one specific problem. And then the next thing was thinking about, okay, how do I fix this problem with people not actually finishing the training? And so I looked at so many different techniques and come to find out there were a lot of there's a lot of psychology behind this problem. And one of the problems is it's just the way that we're conditioned when it comes to training and information. So, and by the way, I'm guilty of this as well. This isn't just, I'm not immune to this. When you buy a book or you buy a course or you sign up for a class, you get that rush, right? You get the rush that feels as if you've accomplished something, right? So like I'm notorious for buying books like in batches. Like I'll buy like 20 books at one time and I feel that rush. I'm like, oh yes. Yep. And then they get here and I'm like, well, I got to do this other stuff. Right. Yep. So you almost trick yourself into believing you've accomplished something and you haven't.
Yep.
Right. But for some people who join courses, when they pull the trigger, they've overcome some sort of limiting belief. And they're like, well, I did it. I took action. I did this thing. But then when you get into the training, like, oh, wait a second. I got to consume 100 videos. Yep. Then I have to understand it. Then I have to act on this. Then it might not work. Well, you know what? I actually need to go focus on this first before I do that. And then you start to, and so it makes perfect sense, right? It makes perfect sense that people do this. And I don't blame anyone for that. But for me, I just think, okay, how do I fix this problem? At least make it better than it is. So I actually, craziest thing was I met my now partner, and he was actually working with a different training program, a high ticket program, and they were doing lead generation. And I literally found him by accident. I was just doing some geeky SEO stuff, and like I found his website. I'm like, this is weird. Like it was a really interesting website, really good copyright. I'm like, who is this guy? So I reached out to him, and I was like, hey, do you want to just jump on a call and just chat, geek out about SEO? So we did that. We geeked out, and then nothing came of it. And then like a year later, this is like, I think this was the end of 2020. So in the midst of, things. And we jumped on another call and he's like, hey, I was wondering if you're still interested in like making your program more high ticket. Just to give you some context, the way my program was basically like $1,000, right? So with payment plans, you could pay in full. That was how it was. Sure. So definitely not high ticket, just kind of middle of the ground. Yeah. And so I talked with him and he's like, hey, would you ever think about just turning this into a high ticket program? And I was like, sure. I mean, I don't know if people in the SEO industry would pay $5,000 or more for a training pro. I just, of course, once again, limiting belief, thinking like that's not possible. And so we actually decided to do it. And I changed the whole dynamic of the program. So the way it used to be was like pretty traditional stuff you'd see, like course and then a Facebook group. That was it. Yep. Right. And the problem with that, there's a lot of problems with that. Number one is when you have a community on Facebook or any other platform, you are bound by their awareness based, baked into the algorithms, right? So like if I post on the Facebook group, I'm hoping that Facebook gives me visibility. Yeah. Right. And that doesn't happen anymore. And that stopped happening back then. And so I spoke with different consultants and various things. And one of the community consultants that I talked to said, the best thing you can do is bring everything in-house. So what we did is so I used to be on Kajabi. So I had a Kajabi platform and I was on Facebook. We took it all to gotchseoacademy.com and built everything in the same platform. So the training, the community, and then the third piece, which is by far the biggest element of all this, is the coaching. So that third piece, I believe, is the reason why we fixed our problem.
Okay.
And so we added this coaching element. I redid all the training as well. So complete upgrade. I upgraded it back then. I've actually just went through another upgrade that took me about a year and a half because of all the AI stuff. I had to redo everything.
Yeah.
And so, but the biggest change to this was, first of all, the price went up dramatically.
Sure.
A much bigger investment. And there's this idea that we talk a lot about, which is like, when you pay attention, right? And when you pay a lot, you really pay attention, right? So it's like, if you buy something for $10, how much do you really care about it, right? Or you buy a cheap car for 10 grand. Are you going to go out there and be buffing it out and, be really careful about it and park it super far away in the parking lot? Like, you're not going to do that. But if you have a Lamborghini, you're going to be much scared, like a lot more scared to bring that thing out into the grocery store, right? You treat things differently depending on the investment that you make. And so we found, just by increasing the investment and adding the coaching, our course completion rate went up to 80%. So we went from the average, which is 10, to 80% now. And I mean, we made significant changes, but the biggest change was I introduced this twice a week coaching. So since May of 2021, I've been doing twice a week coaching every week, with some exceptions, like Christmas, going to Disney World, my family, obviously, things like that. But I think and now actually for Rankability, we've added a Wednesday call for Rankability. So I'm actually doing 3 of these a week, and I've done almost 400 now in that time.
Incredible.
So, and I'm telling you, there's been no bigger difference with that, because I have been through and this is not to bash any other programs, okay? I won't even say SEO programs. We'll just say general online marketing programs, okay? Very rarely will you find the actual creator of the program showing up to help their students.
Yeah.
It just doesn't happen very often.
Yep.
And this was an idea that my partner floated to me, and I was like, no way, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to, like, it's a lot of time investment.
Yeah.
I didn't believe it would actually like produce a big outcome. And funny enough, when I started doing it, we had like 5 people on the calls. It'd be like 5 people. And I'd be like, I don't know if this is a good idea. Like, this is not a good show rate.
Right.
And this was like, for the couple of months, pretty rough, 5 to 10 people. I'm like, all right, I'm going to keep going. I want to at least get to 100, and then I can make a decision here. And now it's like we have at least consistently 35, 40 people on the calls, every call. And so the proof is in the pudding, right?
Yeah.
And so that was the big change. And I just cannot stress it enough how just powerful of a move it's been. And just increasing price, which obviously attracts a different group of people who are very serious about doing this. They come into the program, they're like, all right, I made a big investment. I'm going to take this really seriously, right? So they go through the training, and then they jump on these calls and they're asking very directed questions about the systems that I've given them. Right. So anyway, I could talk all day about this, but it was a big change for me. And like, it really just changed my perspective on so many parts of business, where I'm like, wow, business really is about actual just people. This isn't like, I think there's this idea that a lot of people want to create a product and just not have to talk to anyone. Mm-hmm. Right. That's kind of the idea. Oh, let's do the most scalable thing that we can think of. Let's think about automation. And especially in today's world, it's all about automation and scale and AI. And it's like, man, you can't replace just talking to someone.
It's true.
It's a very simple thing. And like, even for Rankability, I do CEO calls. So every person that signs up for Rankability, my team member sends them an email and says, hey, book a call with Nathan, just wants to chat and help you with, your SEO. It's so funny. People don't even realize that it's actually me doing it.
Yeah.
So when I jump on a call, they're like, wait, I thought this was going to be like your intern or like and they're like, wait, you're actually like doing it? And they're like, I'm not even prepared for this. I didn't have like, yeah, I'm actually doing this. Yeah. And that's why like my partner and I are all about thinking about like, we don't care about scale. Mm-hmm. We care about like, what can we do that's not scalable that no one else is willing to do? And so anyway, it's just a different philosophy, and it's been working well for us as far as retention.
Yes.
Because I believe retention is the key to growth. You may not get growth fast.
Right.
But long-term stability, I think it's the key in business personally, just my opinion. So.
I love that. And it is about doing those hard things. And when you can do those, you keep people around. When you jump on the call with somebody, you're developing the relationship, even though you make that investment. Well, you're doing it every week, but that one big investment where you're like, listen, I'm going to carve out whatever it is, 30, 60 minutes. to actually walk you through the tool, make sure you understand how it works. People are going to remember that for years. That's going to stick with them for a long time. So that's something that people need to understand here is like, listen, these investments that you make of your time, which is the most valuable asset we have, can produce an incredible lifetime value for a really long time. I want to transition a little bit into talking about your book. You wrote The SEO Entrepreneur, helping SEOs start a business. You wrote that, I think it was October 2023. Obviously, you would have started it well before that date.
Yeah.
What has changed in starting an SEO business between then and now?
Yeah, a good amount. Yeah, I mean, so obviously I was writing that, 2022 up into 2023. So yeah, ChatGPT came along then, but I was already using Jasper and I was already using AI prior to ChatGPT. So I already knew like what was coming. Of course, no one could have predicted ChatGPT. That was like mind blowing when that launched. But yeah, so I was basically, kind of focused on that time in what we were working with. And then obviously when I launched in 2023, a lot changed since then. I will say there are some things that have stayed the same. So maybe we'll start with that. What stayed the same? And what stayed the same specifically in the context of starting an SEO business? I know you mentioned earlier talking about focusing on law firms. So I'm almost like a broken record at this point, but niching down is hands down the most important thing you can do. There's like a billion reasons why it's so superior to everything else. And the only reason why I push this so hard is because I didn't niche down. And I felt the pain of what that's like. And so for me, it was like, I just took everyone, plumber, e-commerce, SaaS, I brought it all in.
Yeah.
And that was great for growing revenue, but it was horrible for scaling.
Yeah.
And so I kept hitting these walls. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm just like killing myself working on these campaigns. And the reason is because every time that you bring on a new campaign, especially when they're all different, it's like you have to relearn every time. I have to learn a whole new industry every time I get a client. And that was so incredibly taxing. So then I started to, learn more about niching down. And obviously I've deployed this in my own business, not just on agency side, but like my actual business. You'll notice like all three of my products target a very specific market, target agency owners. And that's a specific, we have identified that as our core market because we know we serve them the best. Right. And so I try to tell everyone, I like shout this from the rooftops. I'm like, please just pick a niche and go into it. And I've actually developed kind of a formulaic process to actually selecting a niche because I've got this question so many times about what niche do I go into, right? Because it's a hard decision to make, because you don't want to make the wrong decision, but of course it's really not that big of a deal. You can just switch, But for some reason, people really build it up in their minds, like, oh my gosh, if I pick the wrong niche, I'm done for. It's really not like that. But there's some general ideas as far as picking a niche that are pretty obvious, right? So I think about the stability of the industry that I'm trying to go into. So there's certain black swan events that we can't predict, obviously. So COVID obviously was a very unique situation where restaurants got shut down and dentists couldn't operate and just a lot of crazy stuff. That's not likely to happen very often. Right. I mean, I think on average about every 100 years that happens. So, maybe we've got another 100 till the next one. At least we've got some time here, hopefully. But identifying an industry that's going to be here for a long time. Right. And so for me, I like things like HVAC and home services and law firms and lawyers, things that we're going to need for a long time. Right. I don't see dentists being replaced anytime soon. So maybe the equipment and the tools that they use will change over time, but the general idea of dentists serving humans is probably not going to go away.
Yep.
So I think about that as the stability. Then I think about the value of a single client for them. And so obviously working with a personal injury lawyer, if they can get just one client, that could be worth $100,000, potentially millions of dollars just for one client. So for them to make an investment in SEO is a lot easier, right? They see the ROI. And so my criteria is kind of simple. It's that 3-to-1 ratio, right? So if they invest $1 in the SEO, can they make $3 back? And so if that ratio is not very clean, the margins are so narrow that you're going to constantly be getting, hey, when are we going to get results? Hey, are we going to, and you don't want to get into that. So I'm trying to find, and obviously 3-to-1's the minimum, but ideally you try to find and that's how you can also determine your pricing too. So you can, based on the value of their client, you can determine, okay, here's where my price can go to make ROI sense. right?
Yeah.
And so obviously anything in the legal space is beautiful. Any
Yes.
dentists, obviously, home services. So that's what I try to get people to think is like, what are these niches we can enter? And the biggest reason that I actually believe this is really important is because the stability of your actual business itself. Because I see people who it's almost kind of misunderstand what niching down actually means. Mm-hmm. And so I'll see people who will be like, oh, I'm the WordPress SEO specialist. And I'm like, okay, yes, there is a problem you're solving there, but that's not a niche. That's a CMS. Yeah. That's basically saying I do SEO for the entire internet.
Exactly.
Essentially. Yeah. Right. Or I even see people say they're niching down to e-commerce. And I'm like, right. E-commerce is not a niche, though. That's just a broad category of basically every website that exists
small
online.
Businesses, and you still have the same problem there.
Exactly. And I know what they're referring to is like businesses that sell physical products, of course, but still e-commerce even applies to a business like mine. I'm still doing e-commerce. I'm just not, I don't have physical products, right? So that's why it's important to figure out, okay, if you're going to do e-commerce, okay, what within e-commerce are you going after? You're going to do, so like in my academy, I have a guy named Tyler, and he focuses on fashion brands. And he went all in on that idea, and he's just crushing it because now he is the guy for SEO for fashion brands, and there's like no competition.
Right.
There's just zero competition. So, and then of course I'm good friends with Chris Dreyer too, who is here in St. Louis, and I'm sure you know who he is in the legal space.
Yeah.
But that was the same thing. He's gone so granular, and he just sticks to it. He does not veer. He just stays with personal injury. They do a little bit of other stuff, but still 95% of his revenue is personal injury.
Yeah.
So anyway, I could talk all day about this, but it's just, it's so important. And that's like the one thing that has not changed and that's one part of the book I spent a lot of time on because it's so important. Now, the things that have changed, which is why it's so important to pick a niche because you can adapt based on the tactics and the strategies and the tools that change over time, which will change. Yeah. That's inevitable. The platforms we use, the tactics we use, the traffic sources, that stuff never is going to stay static. It's just always going to be moving and shifting. So that's why, even in the book, I'm already thinking about like doing a second version of it because even just in that amount of time, my systems have changed so much on the execution side. And so obviously the biggest change is more on the fulfillment end of this. And I'll say to me, the thing I'm really hot on right now is cross-channel SEO, like multi-channel SEO, because obviously with large language models and there's just so many moving parts now at this point. And you can't just be, all your eggs in the Google basket anymore. That's highly dangerous, highly dangerous. I would not recommend that to anyone. And I'm an SEO, I've been doing this a long time. I've been on the Google, platform here for a long time. And it's still the biggest search engine, hands down, not even close, but still you need to be thinking about that kind of multi-channel attack. And it's funny now because I call it SEO, but the way my mind is really thinking and when I think about strategy, it's really just digital marketing.
Yeah.
It is, but SEO has just been branded so well that it's I just got to kind of stick with this is SEO, quote unquote. But my last video, I was talking about email marketing and nurturing and talking about, posting micro content on YouTube Shorts, all kinds of different types of content that we can use now. So a lot has changed, but I think the thing that matters the most is thinking about how do we serve a particular niche and how do we serve them so well that you become so valuable that they don't want to get rid of you.
Exactly.
And that's what I think about is those building hooks, right? Mm-hmm. Hooks in the client to the point where we have to continue using these guys. There's no other option.
And when the industry changes, tactics change. Hey, if tomorrow, Search GPT becomes the big thing, those clients who have the relationship with you are going to be like, all right, Jared, how are we going to dominate Search GPT? Exactly. You're not going to lose them just because the tactic changed. And that's why it's, like you said, so important to niche down.
Yeah. And I used to be highly tactic focused, by the way. I used to be all about tactics. I did gray hat SEO in the beginning days, and it was, how do I hide my private blog network from Google? Sure. I spent so much time thinking about that stuff. And I look back and that was such a waste of time. Yeah. Because that's not how you build a business. Right. That's just, you're just trying to manipulate and play games. And by the way, nothing wrong with that. I don't have any, I don't judge. I did it myself. But I'm just saying, if you're trying to build a serious business, that's not the way you do it. So, yeah.
What are some of the acquisition tactics that you're most excited about for 2025? I think that's probably, especially a lot of the SEOs I talk to, just like me, they're an extreme introvert. You're probably in the same boat. It's tough to kind of put yourself out there. What are you seeing among, the people in your group, your agency owners, where they're crushing it? Maybe some newer tactics. Yes, they rank well, but maybe they're also kind of going after some other things that work really well right now.
Yeah. So the way I'm currently approaching this and trying to train people in my training about this is, you've probably heard the idea of topical authority and topic authority. It's been, been around for a while now. Yeah. I'm actually calling now what I'm thinking of is topic domination. And what I mean by that is, that was really that concept is really applicable to Google and ranking in Google. So okay, we build out supporting assets around an idea and that helps us build the authority. Yeah, that's all good. But I am actually thinking about how do I do that everywhere?
Yeah.
How do I train all the search engine algorithms and all the large language models on this particular idea? And it's funny when you start to study other algorithms, like if you study the X algorithms and LinkedIn and these other ones, funny enough, Google's the hardest. Mm-hmm. Google's by far the most sophisticated. It has the most variables. It measures the most stuff. The other platforms are a lot easier. Yeah. Like way easier. Like LinkedIn, it's like, you just basically user engagement. You target a keyword, specifically like your topic that LinkedIn is used to you talking about. Yeah. You stay in your bubble and then you get good engagement. That's it. That's usually what drives most views. And so what I'm thinking about right now is like, instead of thinking like, all right, how do we do SEO to drive leads? I'm thinking more about like, all right, what's our problem that we solve? Like what's 1 to 3 problems that we solve in this business, whether it's my business or a client's business. And so like, let's say we're working with HVAC. Okay. HVAC company. HVAC companies solve a lot of problems, tons of problems. But what I would do is I would pick one isolated problem. So that would be like furnace repair, right? And so furnace repair, St. Louis, a specific query like that. And then what I do is I think about how do we start to attack this topic, not just for Google, but also on YouTube and LinkedIn and all these other platforms, even considering doing parasite SEO, right? Starting to publish some assets on already authoritative websites, because my intent with this these days is occupy as much SERP real estate as I possibly can. Yeah. So, I did a little test just to prove this. I'm going after the keyword content optimization tools. Okay. And this is what I've been going after since September. I'm slowly going up the first page, but just to prove to people, I'm like, watch how easily I'll get on the first page with YouTube. Yeah. So what I did is I went and recorded a short. It was a 2-minute and 45-second short. Sure. And now on YouTube, you can go up to 3 minutes on these shorts, which is awesome. So I recorded this unscripted, basically unedited. It took me, from end to end, from recording to publishing, maybe 15 minutes. Yeah. Okay. Got it live literally within 24 hours on the first page of Google.
Amazing.
So I'm like, okay, this blog post that I built took me 8 hours just to write it. Then all the investment of link acquisition just to get it to move. Then on top of it, building topic support around it to ensure that Google understands that our site's a topic authority on content optimization. Yep. When you put that all together compared to just quick recording with my iPhone and publishing, you start to see like, oh man, you start to do the math on that and you're like, this doesn't, it's kind of hard. So the way I think about it is like when I find an idea, I'm looking at the SERPs, but I'm not just thinking about, okay, how do I rank on Google? Like traditional website, ranking. I'm thinking like, how do I rank in a lot of different spots? Yeah. Right. How do I capture as many clicks as humanly possible here? And that's the way I think about everything now. So that's why, like, if I find a keyword content optimization tools, it used to be pretty simple. You just build out your asset, right? And then you publish it and you work on promoting that one asset. But now I think like, okay, I published that asset. Now what's next? Okay, now I'm going to create these micro assets to support it on YouTube. Maybe create a long form video on YouTube. Like, can I create a TikTok variation of this? Can I create some micro content for X and LinkedIn, like to support this topic? And of course, the objective is to bring everyone back to the website. Absolutely. Right? Bring everyone back to the website, either get them to convert or get them on my email list. Right. So it's all integrated to bring them back to my home base. But that's the idea. So
love it.
I think that omnipresent attack is probably the way forward for sure.
Okay. That's awesome. Kind of the last topic I wanted to cover with you is obviously as somebody who's worked with, I believe, over 1,000 agency owners now, you have a really clear understanding of kind of the core attributes that make up a successful SEO agency owner.
Yeah.
What are those 2 or 3 top attributes? If you kind of said, hey, here's the top 1% of people who have gone through my program, and here's the things they had in common, what are those things?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, because I mean, I'm thinking of the people that are the most successful in my program, and they do have a lot of commonalities. There's a lot of commonalities. One of them, which I think stands out the most, is they don't just consume. Like if I say, hey, to Jared, for example, one of my people in my training program, he went from working a full-time job, basically making $0 from his agency. Now I think he's getting close to $1 million a year in his agency.
Yeah.
And he is like, it's incredible because, I've done like 400 of these coaching calls. He's been on every single one.
Wow.
Every single one, no matter how he's gotten progressively more busy and more work to do, he still shows up every single call.
Yeah.
And so for me, I think about like the commitment and the consistency. That's a big piece, but it's not just that. It's also like when I say something or I give some sort of advice, he doesn't say, oh, that's a cool idea. And then it just disappears into the abyss. He says, oh, okay, I'm going to go and execute on that like today.
Yeah.
And it's this focus on action, right? The information that they get, they act on it. And that to me is like the key difference because we've even had other people in the training who like weren't wildly successful when they started, right?
Yeah.
It was much more of a grind. I'm more of a grinder, right? When I do something, it takes forever. like it's just like I expect that to happen at this point. I'm like, you know what? I'm starting this thing. It's going to basically suck for a while. So here I go, right? I just accept it. But other people are, there's these people who can just like, they just figure things out a lot quicker. And there's other people it takes longer. It's not a race, right?
Yeah.
We're fighting our own, our own battles, our own races. Absolutely. But even then, the people that have taken a little bit longer, they stuck with it. They just stuck with it and they kept going and now they're seeing the fruits of their labor. Yeah. Right. And so that's why I think like comparison, obviously the thief of joy, it's a really big problem in business. Yeah. Because especially online, there's liars everywhere. Yeah. Right. For sure. And so you see people, making this, it's like a 19-year-old saying they're making X amount of money with their agency. I'm like, I don't know.
Maybe, but maybe you're one in a million. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
That's not the prototypical journey.
Right. And statistically, that's not likely. Right. Like, cause like the average CEO is like 40 something years old of a business. So like there's a lot of statistics that go against that. Yeah. But the point is like, I've noticed that they get focused on their own stuff and they're focused on their own journey and their own progress. And your progress is not dependent on someone else's progress. Absolutely. So I would say if there's like 3 things, number 1 is consistency, consistently showing up and being a willing learner, like actually having the humility to come in and say, I don't know everything. That's a big deal. And I do this myself. Like a year ago, I, paid $2,000 for a consultant to help me with something. He told me 5 things. 2 of them I already knew. 3 of them I was like, those are great ideas. Yeah. And going back to the execution, we executed on that and our business literally doubled. Yeah. It's not about being smart. Right. It's not about being intelligent. I think it's a quote from maybe Brian Tracy, but like, I always think about it and he's like, there's nothing worse than someone dumber than you making more money than you. I'm like, I think about that a lot, right? Because it's a very simple idea, but there's a lot of meaning there because even a smart person who doesn't execute doesn't matter. Right. Right. So that's why I found is like, it's the execution. It's like having the humility to learn, consistently executing, and then just having the persistence to continue doing it. Yeah. Because shiny objects are everywhere. That's half the battle is just putting your blinders on and sticking to it. And that's why I usually try to set targets for people. So like people have a lot of fear over doing YouTube videos, which I understand. I was there too. But people always ask me, like, how do I get started on YouTube? What are the tactics? And I'm like, don't even think about that. Only think about tactics and optimization when you've published 100 videos. Absolutely. Don't even think about anything. Don't even look at your metrics. Right. Exactly. Just produce. Yeah. And the thing is, I know for a fact that if someone produces 100 videos, they're going to learn a lot. Yeah. They're going to get better. It's impossible to not get better. right? So I just know that will happen. So that's what I think about is like when people are kind of stuck, just set a target and think about nothing else. Just put your blinders on and do it. And even small things, like even for me thinking about like whether I want to do something or not, I fall into that too. Like we started doing the coaching calls for rankability. And like, once again, when we started them, we had like 3 people on the call. And I'm like, here we go again. Like I'm starting over. But I was like, even my partner, we were like questioning, like, should we do this? I don't know. Maybe people who use software don't like doing coaching calls. But now we have like 20 people on the calls. Right. And I literally said, I'm like, all right, I'm not giving up till we do at least 100.
Right.
We can reassess then. Once we've done 100, then we can decide, is this worth it? But you don't have enough data.
Exactly.
Like you just don't have data to make decisions, and you need data to actually be able to make an educated decision. And so it's actually that simple, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah.
But anyway, those are kind of the ideas that
I
love
it.
I would say. Yeah.
Yeah. Nathan, thank you so much for being
here
today. For people that want to follow you, what's the best way for them to do that?
I mean, I think I'm most consistent on YouTube. Okay. So yeah, if you want to see my most in-depth stuff, definitely on YouTube. I post obviously on LinkedIn and X and other platforms, but I would say YouTube, Nathan Gotch, best. Yep.
Perfect. Well, thanks so much again.
Thank you so much.